Hello everybody, how's it going? It's me, Crendor, and welcome back to Crendor Talks in front of a shitty green screen. Today, I wanted to talk about New Year's resolutions, essentially, but Warhammer New Year's resolutions. Or even just miniature. It doesn't have to be more Warhammer in particular, right? But I was just thinking about how everybody makes New Year's resolutions, right? You go, I'm gonna go to the gym more. I'm gonna, you know, eat better, or whatever it might be. You know, everybody does it. But I feel like this is also a great time to do the same thing for Warhammer painting, right? Or miniature painting, or whatever it is. So maybe now is the time where you say, hey, you know what? I've had this box of, I don't know, skinks, or space marines, or Necron. Like, it doesn't matter. You've had them sitting there for so long, and now you're like, you know what? I'm gonna build those this year. And I think this is a great time to do those things. Right now, I will say, everybody always makes fun of New Year's resolutions because most people end up not doing them. But that's actually not completely true. Most people start doing something and then they stop eventually. But I still think it's a good time to kind of, you know, see how well you can progress with that motivation you have that's fresh from the start of the new year. You know what I mean? And so I think another good thing would be maybe you have some unpainted miniatures. Maybe it's not even building. Maybe it's you haven't painted something. And you're like, you know what? I've been meaning to paint that Saurus Sunblood for years now. You know what? I'm going to paint him. And I'm going to paint him today or like this month. Or I think the sooner you actually start engaging in whatever you want to do, the New Year's resolution, whatever it is, the easier it becomes. Because a lot of people say, oh, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym next week, right? I'm going to start eating healthy, you know, later this month, or I'm going to do this for the entire month. I think with miniature painting or building or whatever it might be, I think you can kind of start right away and you can get going with the progress pretty quickly, and you can see the progress quickly. And I think that's one of the biggest things that kind of differentiates this from your standard New Year's resolutions, right? Because a lot of times when you go to the gym, it takes months and years for your changes to happen, right? If you're the weight to go down, the muscles to build up, like all these different things to occur, right? Or if you're trying to eat healthy, you know, it takes a while for you to like kind of get to a point of like, hey, you know what? I'm constantly eating healthy to the point where it becomes habitual. But with something like miniature painting, like if you build something, you have now built it. And you're like, oh, look, I built it, right? Or if you paint it, you're like, oh, look at this. It is now somewhat painted, right? A lot of times all you need is that little extra motivation to get started on something. I always called it like the 5-minute rule. A lot of times if I don't want to do something, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it for 5 minutes, right? Whether it doesn't even have to be Warhammer. It could be cleaning. A lot of times I'm like, you know what? I'm going to clean for 5 minutes. And once I get started, I clean for like an hour, right? And, you know, you just need that little push in the right direction. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to paint for like 5 minutes. And I paint for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or however long. And so I think now is a great time to kind of take advantage of that motivation, essentially, right? And say, you know what? I'm going to do that, right? You don't even have to go crazy with it. I think a lot of people also go a little too crazy with all these things, right? They're like, I'm going to hit the mic. I'm going to paint my entire army this year. I'm going to paint, you know, I'm going to work out nonstop. I'm going to eat healthy the entire year. You know you're not going to do that, right? Something's going to happen. You're going to eat McDonald's. Something's going to happen. You get sick and, you know, you're sick for a week and then you're like, I don't want to keep working out, right? You fall off the train. And that's why I think it's better to just make consistent little goals. It seems more reasonable and more rewarding. So like, you know what? Instead of saying, I'm going to paint my entire Beast of Chaos army this year, say, you know what? I am going to make sure that I paint that unpainted Gorgon model over there, which is why I brought the Gorgon. I hope they're good in the new book, man. I really do. But, you know, like something like that, right? Something where it's like, you know what? I'm going to focus on like this one model or doing this one thing. Like I'm going to make sure this model gets painted or this model gets built. So I would say those are probably my best tips. Or even if you're somebody that maybe you've always struggled to paint, right? Maybe you have a bunch of things you've built. Maybe you like playing the actual Warhammer game, but you've always struggled to paint your models. Or maybe you don't even care about playing the game. Maybe you just bought some like models a while ago and you built them and you're too scared to paint. I think that's another common one. People get too scared to paint. And maybe it's like, you know what? This year, I'm going to actually paint something. Maybe you say, you know what? I have this little goat man, right? I have this Bestigor here. And it's like, you know what? I am going to make sure that I paint this Bestigor, right? I'm going to make sure, and even just starting with breaking those little goals into even smaller goals and saying, you know what? This week, I'm going to make sure that I paint this Bestigor's axe. Like, that's, I think, the best way to go about it. And saying, you know what? Yeah, this axe, this is getting painted this week. Because if you say, like, I'm going to paint this guy this week, and then you sit down, you're like, I don't know where to start. You know, I don't know what to do. But if you say, you know what? I'm going to paint an axe. Then you could maybe watch, like, axe painting tutorials. You could watch weapon painting tutorials and be like, you know what? Okay. You know, I'm going to paint the axe. And once you paint the axe, you're like, wow, that was really cool. And that was easy. And I learned a lot. Now I'm going to, you know, paint his shoulder pads, right? Then you focus on the armor. Say, you know what? I'm going to paint these shoulder pads this week, right? Or this month. Wow, however long you want to give yourself. You know, don't be like this month and then keep delaying, but like, you know, reasonable to your schedule. You know, and then I'm going to paint the horns. And the thing is, even if you only do a little bit every day, this is one thing I preach all the time. If you only paint like 15 minutes a day, you don't even have to sit down for hours and hours, right? And you're like, you know what? I'm going to paint his horns, right? Then I'm going to paint his little like satchel. Then I'm going to paint his little like cloth thing he's got on him, right? And before you know it, if you do like 15 minutes a day, in like a week or two, he's going to be done. And you're going to be like, dude, I painted a miniature. Right? And I think something like that is also a thing that can propel you forward with achieving your greater goal of like painting an entire army, right? Because then you get in the habit of doing this. You learn things and progress. And I think that really is probably the best way to go about doing things, even though obviously you want to be like, oh, I want this big goal. But a lot of times the little smaller goals and then breaking those smaller goals into smaller goals is like the best way to actually make progress on whatever you want to make progress on. So, and I mean, you could add that to life, man. You'd be like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym, or you don't even have to go to the gym. You'd be like, I'm going to lift some weights for like 10 minutes. And you do that and you're like, you know what? Great. And then tomorrow I'm going to go for a walk, and you go for a walk. And then, you know, before you know it, you're like, dude, I want to exercise, right? A lot of it's just doing all those little things. Or maybe, you know, one meal a day, you're going to make it home, or you're going to eat healthy, right? Maybe you eat 3 meals a day that are unhealthy. You're like, I'm going to eat 1 healthy meal. And then after a while, you're like, no, I'm going to eat 2 healthy meals, right? And you just kind of slowly progress. So yeah, I wanted to make a video that kind of helps people paint and build and just enjoy this hobby that I've really grown to love over the last 3 or so years, and to help people get into it and progress in it and kind of stick with it, because I really do enjoy this hobby. Like, I'm so glad that I got into it, and now I want other people to feel the same way. You know what I mean? Because it's just been fantastic for my mental health. Because anytime I get stressed or anxiety, I'm like, you know what? I can just sit here and paint. It's great for creativity. You know, I used to feel like I had this creative void, and now that I'm doing all this, it kind of just feels like that's kind of been solved. It's been fantastic. And then being able to actually play the game, you know, not everybody has to play the game, but, you know, being able to play the game and like, you know, have all these armies has been fantastic, because it's also helped my social life. Meeting people and, you know, going to their houses and playing games and 2v2s and 1v1s and just interacting with real people, not on a computer, has been, it's been really nice. So, you know, overall, I'm just trying to help you. So hopefully this does help. And yeah, so thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. Okay? Okay. See ya.